Well, I guess the first time I became aware of the Grand Theatre was when my parents used to bring my brother and I to the pantomime. And back then it used to run for 3 months, I think. It was the longest running in the country, I believe. But that was the first time I was introduced to this beautiful theatre. And little did I know, years later, I'd actually be playing in the pantomimes myself. First one was when I was 9 years old. And actually I celebrated my 10th birthday, which is the 8th of March, on stage with a cake back then. So, and including the gang shows, which I think I was 7 when I did the first gang show, run and directed by the fabulous John Chilvers. That was the first time I appeared on stage here in the gang shows. And then, as I said, 9, that's my dog. If you hear anyone barking, it's my dog, Dottie, who's also appeared on the stage here twice and stole the show. I just said I was working for 2 hours, sweating, and on she came. Within 2 seconds, I had a standing ovation. So the old adage is right, never work with children and animals. Anyway, so yes, I was a child when I first performed here at around 7. And at 9 years of age, I got my child equity card, which back then you had to have to perform in the business professionally. You had to have an equity card. So I got mine at 9 years of age. And then I got my provisional, and then I got my full equity card. But sadly, you don't need them now. I wish they would bring them back. But there you go. But yeah, that was my first introduction to this beautiful theatre. And in this room, which is the Grand Circle Bar, I celebrated my 21st birthday here. I hired the whole theatre. We had ground floor for the disco and the bar, and this floor was the food and for the older people, which is where I'd be now. Catherine Zeta-Jones came, and all the girls back from the Phyllis Jones tap dancing school where I started at 3, and Ray Kopp was here. It was a wonderful night full of just great fun and memories. I was in Chess at the time in London, so all the cast came down from the show, and we had a really great night here. So this place is full of memories for me. In fact, my parents met on the stage at the Grand Theatre. My mum played piano for my father. The pianist that was supposed to play was ill, so she asked my mum, and she refused at first because she didn't want to mess it up for anyone. And she, please. So she said, oh, all right. And the person she was playing for was my father. So that's where they met, here. So it's a very, very special place in my heart. I'm getting a little bit emotional. Whew. Yes, very special. So as I mentioned, my mum and dad met at this theatre. My mum was an opera singer. She trained as a classical pianist and an opera singer at the Royal College of Music in London. She won a scholarship at the age of 18 to study there for 3 years. So she lived in London for 3 years. So after just meeting my dad, the first 3 years of their courtship was back and forth to London, which of course is where I live now. But mum was terribly homesick, and at the end of 3 years, came back to Swansea, married my dad, and then had my brother Carey and myself. But my dad also was a singer. He did all the clubs around Swansea and the valleys for about 25, 30 years. My mum still sang. She joined the Gilbert and Sullivan Cocket Society's Gilbert and Sullivan. And so again, I was brought up listening to all the Gilbert and Sullivan musicals, singing along and joining in the old welfare hall as it was then. It was, so I suppose all my life I've been surrounded by music, song, dancing, very, very happy and very lucky childhood, I guess. And whenever I come home, which is often now because both my parents, I'm lucky they're still both alive and well. So I come home to see them as much as I can now. And it's wonderful to always come back to the theatre because I feel so at home here as a building and the people within it. And I think it's wonderful, first of all, what Ian Parsons does for this theatre is pretty special. And we're very, very lucky to have him. And also I think the fresh injection of grand ambition is what the theatre has needed for quite a while. They're wonderful, young, brilliant performers in their own right, but they have fantastic ideas for young people and old people, all the community, to join in and celebrate this theatre. Because I know other theatres have been built recently, but what you can't, supply are memories. That takes years, and an atmosphere that you get here that I don't think you get anywhere else in Swansea. When you walk into this building, the stars that have appeared here, it's a very special place, and I think we should be very proud Swansea Jacks to have it. So I'm thrilled and honoured to be able to still perform here, pop in, say hello. My little dog's with me, but is a bit camera shy at the moment. I don't think that we paid her enough money to appear on screen. She's been on stage, as I said, with me, so I think interviews aren't her thing. It's either the theatre and the spotlight or nothing. But yeah, that's my link and with this place. I just feel at home. Mum was big musical theatre fan, and so any musicals or films that came on TV, Mum would encourage me and Carrie to watch, and so I was always surrounded by musicals, theatre, and I loved Shirley Bassey. I loved all the flamboyancy of the performing. I guess like I always say, I sort of fell into it as a career. It was always just a hobby that suddenly I got paid for it and thought, oh, this can't be bad. And then it's my 40th year this year, so in the business. So great. My first professional show was, I was 15, for Vivian Ellicott. Vivian Ellicott, the Kenneth More Theatre.
Yeah.
I did Godspell, and then the Lyceum in Crewe. And then from that, and then I went into Cinderella in Porthcawl. Pavilion, I was 15, Charles Vance. So really my journey into the West End was, I toured with Joseph first, where I cut my teeth really. I was 16 and I turned 17 on that tour. And then I came back home and did a panto, and then I went up to Manchester to do Evita when I was 19. And then I got my first West End show, Chess, when I was 20. And from Chess, I went into Cats. From Cats, I did Les Miserables, and on and on. But I think, Chess was my first professional show. And but as I said, I got my full equity card doing Joseph, which I'd done in school, which a lot of children start their career, say they started in school playing, doing Joseph. But so Joseph has a special place in my heart, again, because I did it with Philip Schofield and Ali Jones much later on. But I also played the narrator when I was 16, which is when I first left home to tour the country. Yeah. So I'd always wanted to do my own show at the Grand Theatre, and I think I was in Cats at the time, so I would have been around 21. And I thought, so I basically rented the theatre and produced the show myself, and I brought friends down from London, John Barr, my friend Richard Lloyd King, and John Quirk MD'd it for me, and I did 3 performances, I think, on the Friday and 2 on the Saturday. And I just rented the theatre myself, and a friend of mine called Keith Beckett at the time was a big TV producer. He produced the Shirley Bassey shows on TV back in the day, and I was friendly with his daughter, and he said, I'll come down and direct it for you. And he did. He came down and sort of sorted out the lighting and everything, and that was it. And then I came back. I've been back since, twice with my own show, I think in 2014, and I can't remember when the other one was, bit later on, a lot later I think. And then I've been back with my brother, Kerry Dupree. We did Misleading Ladies here, and of course Sunset. So but I actually think about it, I was quite ballsy to come back in my 20s and rent the theatre out to do my own show. I wouldn't do it now, and I think after that I said never again. But it was a big thrill to come here on my own with my own show, with my friends. It was great, and we had a great 3 nights. Yeah. For me, John Chilvers is the Grand Theatre. I don't think the Grand Theatre would be open and here today if it hadn't been for John Chilvers. Back in the day, we used to produce big musicals here. I remember Gypsy and, there were just Cabaret. There was some fantastic productions. And of course, he brought the gang shows here, which is where I started here. And in fact, he gave me a solo spot in the gang shows, and he named me Little Miss Dynamite. That was his name for me. So I've got a lot to thank John for. I think if it hadn't been for John Chilvers, I wouldn't be in the business now. Definitely not. He encouraged me. He encouraged a lot of young performers. And he recognised people at a very young age and nurtured them and helped them. Because of him, I did the pantos here. And then because of that, I went on to do other shows. So I think... for me, he is the Grand Theatre. Swansea Grand Theatre is a wonderful, wonderful man. I can see him now. I can hear his voice. He was great fun. I adored him. And Freddie Lees too, wonderful, wonderful actor. And I was lucky enough to do panto here with him. He played Widow Twankey in Aladdin here. And for me, he's the best dame. He was the best dame in the business. Very funny man, very gentle man, brilliant, brilliant actor. And both Freddie and John supported me throughout my career, came to see many, many shows of mine. I'm only sad that both John and Freddie didn't see Sunset Boulevard here, because that would have been very special. I'm sure they were looking down, enjoying it, front row for sure, dress circle. I'm often asked, what was it like that night I went on for Glenn Close in Sunset Boulevard at the Coliseum back in 2016. It's funny because quite a few of my friends thought I shouldn't have taken the job because I'd played leading roles in my own right. Why should I, understudy or stand by? In fact, it wasn't understudying, it was called a standby, and there is a difference. When you understudy somebody, you're usually in the show as well, and you understudy them. So if they go off sick, you jump in and someone jumps into your role. With a standby, you're not in the production, you're literally standing by in the wings, which I did every night. And it's quite funny, in the first day of rehearsals, when we all, after the introductions, the director then said, right, okay, let's start with the first scene. And I was like, first time ever, I thought, where do I go? I've always been in the show. Where does a standby sit in rehearsals? Anyway, I sat next to a very good friend of mine, Stephen Mear, who's a choreographer, choreographed it. And for 6 weeks, I sat and watched all the rehearsals, watched Glenn rehearse. She allowed me into all her one-on-one rehearsals, which was lovely. But I didn't rehearse myself. And we got to the theatre and we opened the show, and I still hadn't had any rehearsals. But I'd done my homework and I knew the show because many of you might not know, 26 years previously, I was the first person ever to sing the role of Norma Desmond when Andrew Lloyd Webber workshopped it at his home in Sydmonton. I'd just finished Cats for him, and he asked me if I'd sing the role of Norma Desmond for the first time, which was a big honour for me. And I knew at the time I was way too young to play the role, but it was an honour to sing it. And there is some small footage of me singing some of the songs 26 years previously. So for me, it was incredible that, fast forward all those years, and here I am at the Coliseum about to go on for Norma Desmond because Glenn Close was sick. And I remember about 9:30 in the morning, I got a phone call from the company manager saying I might be on. I was put on standby, literally, and because Glenn wasn't feeling well. And then I went out for lunch with friends, and at 3:30, I got a phone call to say I was on that night. and I'd never had a full run through of the show. I'd never run it with the orchestra. I didn't even have a full set of costumes. I had to wear my own skirt, shoes. So I finished my meal, which my friends couldn't believe. And I said, well, what else can I do? And then I met Michael Xavier, who played Joe Gillis in the theatre at, I think, 5 o'clock, where we literally just ran through the tango once together, tried on full set of costumes, I had Betty Buckley's coat, Patti LuPone's something else. I was literally, they pulled something from somewhere for me to have a full set of costumes. And then that night on I went. And I knew there were going to be people very, very disappointed, rightly so. But I've been in the business long enough to know that they weren't really booing me. They were booing the situation. So I didn't take it personally. People saying, what was it like to go on? People were shouting, we want our money back, booga. And I said, well, they didn't know me from a bar of soap, so it doesn't bother me. It made me more determined to get on there and, do a show 'em, so to speak. So I turned my tannoy down in my dressing room and just concentrated on the job in hand. And it was a role I'd always wanted to play, and I was the right age. I was 50, and it was the right time and the right age. And all eyes were on me, and, you can imagine. But sadly, I'd lost a very dear friend, Victoria Wood, the day before. And so I just said to myself, you know what, this one's for Vic. She's up there. She probably sorted this out so I'd get on. And so I just focused on doing it for Vic. And I thought in a way I had an advantage because not many people in the audience knew who I was. So they were seeing Norma Desmond as opposed to Glenn Close playing Norma Desmond. And as much as you try to forget it's Glenn Close, it's still a big movie star, Glenn Close, playing another character. With me, they didn't know who I was. So they just saw Norma Desmond, which I thought was a big plus. And after the first song, which is With One Look, they went crazy. I really put my heart and soul into it. And they went crazy. They wouldn't stop. And I thought, right, okay, that's one down, so many to go. And I just focused on the story and the storytelling of it. And the end of the show was, it was just something else. They wouldn't stop cheering, applauding. The whole building was standing, cheering. And they wouldn't let me off. I think I had 3 or 4 curtain calls, and the orchestra had finished playing and they were still applauding. The orchestra were applauding. It was a night I'll never forget. And then I had 3 other performances after that. And then Michael Harrison, the producer, was in the audience on the last night. And he rang me up the next morning. He said, Ria, this is your role. We have to do it. I've spoken to Andrew Lloyd Webber and asked if we can have the rights. And he said, yeah, if Ria plays the role, you can have the rights. So a year later, I ended up playing Norma in my own right on a UK and European tour. And Michael said, you know what, we have to take the show to Swansea. There's one line in the song, As If We Never Said Goodbye, which is I've Come Home at Last. He said, there's no way she can play that role and not sing that line in her hometown. So you can imagine I was here for a week, and the cast were waiting. We were all waiting for me to sing that one line. And I remember looking out to the audience and seeing the audience waiting. When I sang I've Come Home at Last, the whole place roared and everyone stood up, stopped the show really. And the cast were crying behind me. I had to hold it together because it meant so much. My parents were in the audience, the history of me first appearing on stage here, and then all that happened with, the role and coming back home, playing that role on my hometown theatre's stage, singing that song, I've Come Home at Last, was something I will never forget as long as I live. And I think people who were there that week still say the same to me. I'll never forget that time you sang it in Swansea. So Sunset, Norma Desmond, Swansea, it's very, very special memories. It really is. I think it's a really important part of Swansea, the Grand Theatre, because of its history, of course, but also it's a place for community. and it should be for the community, the theatre, definitely. Like I said, I spent most of my childhood here, growing up here with pantomimes and gang shows, and I think it would be lovely to think that future generations will enjoy the same. And that's why it's great that Grand Ambition is here, because it's injecting new life into this gorgeous theatre. And it does have an important role, I think, in the city, because of its history, as I said, and it's a very intimate space when you're on stage. I love the intimacy. Although you're in a theatre, you feel so close to the audience here. You can always see the whites of their eyes, and although it's nice to have other venues that are bigger and grander, personally, I prefer more of an intimate stage and space to perform in, and you get that here in the Grand that you won't get elsewhere. And I just love the atmosphere and that beautiful auditorium. It's stunning, to look out from stage and see it full. It's wonderful. So yes, it's very important that we keep it alive, for sure, for future generations to enjoy it just like I have. Yeah. So yeah, I would love to come and direct something here. I'd love to encourage young, local, new talent. When I was a little girl, if somebody had come and done master classes or anything like that, I'd have jumped at it. So I'd love to give something back to the theatre, because I've gotten so much out of it. So I'm in talks with Grand Ambition and the theatre to maybe come home at some point and do master classes and possibly direct a show here. I'd love to do a play here. I've got some nice ideas for just stories from Swansea, and then build them into a show, a play. It would be lovely to come and work here more, spend more time here, not just on stage, but behind the scenes as well, because I would love to direct, and like I say, I'd love to nurture and encourage new local talent, because we have so much talent in Wales, and I think it would be lovely for just to encourage that and work with young people. I get so much out of it. I do lots of workshops up in London and masterclasses with young students and performers, and after it I feel, I don't know, it's just given me another lease of life myself, because you forget after, it's my 40th year this year in the business, and sometimes you get a bit jaded and you forget how magical it is sometimes, and to see young people and their enthusiasm and their talent is just it's wonderful to be part of. So I'd love to come home and encourage that within the youngsters in Swansea. Nah, she says. No, I'm not. Come on then, Dottie, come. Up here. Oh. Come here. Never work with children and animals. Look at her, madam. Come on. Slow walk. Come here, please. Stubborn. She's from Merthyr. She's stubborn. Come on.